Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine. I commentate along, I drop in facts and observations, and try to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about each instalment might be.
Hello, Toby. As you can see, I'm recording this urgent message from Gallifrey. For the people from your podcast who don't know me, I am Nev Fountain. I am a writer of many things. I'm mainly known for comedy because I contribute to Private Eye and Dead Ringers. And I do write some murder mystery books with a science fiction twist. The story I want you to watch, Toby, is set on Gallifrey and it is called The Invasion of Time.
Well, hello, and welcome to part 3 in the Invasion of Time. But before we start invading times and indeed places, we're going to go to Patreonville, where some of the people who have been watching along with me have sent in some comments. And they start with Paul Murphy, who says, "Hey, I'm here for the post-credits wanging too." For those of you who don't know, that I do throw in some irrelevant comment musings, sometimes unrelated, sometimes not, after the credits and after the plugs for Patreon and Ko-fi. On the podcast version, there's always a little bit of a sting in the tail. I know it's less relevant than the stuff that's in the actual podcast itself, and I mused last time that only Ashley Knight, who I know, who is a confessed post-credits, somebody who cruises along in post-creditsville. I gave Ashley a name check there, and a few of the other people who are also that way inclined have shown their umbrage of being overlooked. Paul is one of them. Jason Thompson says ditto, and John Hall says you are not alone. So I'll bundle those in with my gang as well. We will. If there's pampas grass outside your house, it means that you listen to the post-credits bit. So that's I should have seen that as I cruised past you guys. Jason Thompson comes back in and says, "Just listening now and feeling slightly guilty. You invite comments and I seem to have given you extra homework." Not at all, Jason, because Jason had mentioned about the TARDIS set and thinking that it was shot on location, and I double checked and it wasn't. It's one of the few sets that isn't shot as OB. So it's weird because they have some of the filmed location stuff, including interiors like the hospital later on, but also they have some interiors that are shot on location but on OB cameras. So you still have this weird mix of film and videotape, but it's not the usual delineation that you would expect, i.e. interiors in a studio are inside on the electronic cameras, exteriors and some special interiors on film with the film cameras. It's not the case here. You can't necessarily spot what is where. And Jason thought that the TARDIS was on location, which is why it's shot and lit slightly differently, but it's not. It is shot on OB cameras, though, so maybe that has caused the difference that you see. Maybe they've had to light them differently for that, Jason, because I think I read that certainly the ending to part 5 was done as a result of something that they do with the OB camera in the TARDIS. So I don't know, and don't apologise for giving me extra homework. This is sort of stuff I should know and used to, I think, be able to pluck from my synapses very easily. But age shows that they're fraying, and I'm not the man I was. I'm a bit like season 15 of Doctor Who. I'm a bit shoddy. Right, Jason Thompson comes back. Jason is a repeat correspondent. Talking of Dennis Edwards, says he, Dennis Edwards, who plays Lord Gomer. I forgot when listening to episode 1 that it was only on recent viewing I realised he seems to have a relevant line to the plot, disguised in what appears to be a couple of old men chattering about how times have changed. When he and the other Time Lord are talking together before the Doctor's induction ceremony, he makes reference to his hobby studying wavelength broadcast power transduction, and he says, "You see, I've noticed lately, well, over the last decade or so, an enormous fluctuation in relative wavelength transduction over a particularly narrow band." They then get interrupted by the fanfare, but as we later learn, the Vardans can travel along any wavelength. Is this a hint of what's to come? Yes, I suppose it is. Yes, so that's good. That's good planting from the scriptwriter. Ashley Knight says, "Hi Toby, I'm now off in search of Tripods podcasts. They must be out there. And see, there are a few out there who enjoy the weird stuff at the end. It's like a secret society." Yes, I made it sound like a bunch of swingers, Ashley, but secret society, I think, is probably more what you were hoping to be a part of. But nonetheless, everyone who listens to the post-credits, khakis are now... Khakis? Is it khakis are now in a hat? I don't know how sex parties work. Now, John Hall... Well, nobody, apart from me, has even brought sex parties into the conversation. John Hall says, I like Nev's idiosyncratic choice of the Doctor's toga scarf for this episode. This is our guest Nev Fountain's choice of the Doctor's scarf as his favourite thing for episode 2, as it highlights the accessory that Tom wears for only 3 stories. Ooh, good spot, John. John is very hot on sort of trivia. He often sends me questions. Sometimes, I think, John asks me questions that John already knows the answer to, but that's all right. That Tom only wears for 3 stories: Image of the Fendal, Underworld, and this. It's a longer, wider scarf than his usual one, with darker and duller colours, and I've always wondered Tom's thoughts on it, as it disappears between seasons 15 and 16, and its whereabouts have never been discovered. Did he dislike its width or colour scheme? He seems to have approved of the new scarf's length, as his scarves for the next 3 seasons are even longer. Good question. Scarves are not my forte, John. Frank Shells adds, it does look especially great on the Invasion of Time full-length hardback novelisation cover. Andrew Skilleter must have thought highly of it, perhaps along similar lines to Nev. And you know what? I'd never really even taken it in. John Hall is back again. Speaking of connections to the deadly assassin, he says, the Doctor wears his billowing white Poet's shirt, last seen in that story, possibly to commemorate his return to Gallifrey. It's the last time we'll see that puffy part of his ensemble on screen, although the Doctor's white ascot will continue through the pirate planet, and he'll keep wearing his Talons of Weng-Chiang waistcoat throughout seasons 16 and 17, and it's swan song in Shard of the Five Doctors, which incidentally is the last time he wears the brown velvet frock coat seen in this story. The essay on the Fourth Doctor's sartorial choices has been sponsored. This essay on the Fourth Doctor's sartorial choices has been sponsored by the intergalactic division of Grace Brothers, found in all upmarket high streets within the constellation of Kasterborous and beyond. Thank you, John. That was very educational. Frank Shale says, I listen to the post-credits every single time. Ooh, we're seeing a pattern here. Is there anyone in Rome who hasn't listened to the post-credit sequence with my daughter? If you don't know what that's a reference to, I'm going to leave it there. On a more serious note, says Frank, I am so glad you mentioned Ian McLaughlin and Siobhan Galichon in the credits, because it brings home what a lovely community this corner of fandom is. I feel like they're still here in spirit. Love to you all. Oh, Frank, that's lovely, Frank. And yes, well, I was mindful of Sidney Clute, who remained in the credits of Cagney and Lacey long after his death, and it seems no extra work and not taking away from any of the rest of you if I occasionally throw Ian and Siobhan in there, because they were members, they were patrons and supporters of this podcast up until literally the day that they died. So I think we can continue having them here in spirit. It's very humbling, isn't it, though, to note that they're gone, and indeed some contributors to I mean, they're both contributors to Happy Times and Places as well, as was Anthony Fletcher Goldspink. So we're losing people, but I guess that's age and time's winged chariot. Jason Thompson totally agrees. He says they may be gone, but their staunch support is still being built upon, so it seems only right their names should continue to appear. Yep. I think that's nice, and I'm glad you concur with that. Thank you, guys. Jason Thompson also says the wibbly Bakerfoil Vardens frankly look bad enough, but the decision to accompany them with the sound of wibbly Bakerfoil just compounds the problem. Looking ahead to part 3, it has my all-time favourite Leela line as she defends the Doctor to Rodan, who insists that reason dictates the Doctor is a traitor. Then reason is a liar. Chef's kiss, says Jason Thompson. Shane Play says, oh, what is that on the wall? This current series is just worth it for Toby's spontaneous commentary on the set design alone. I feel I was a bit hard, Shane. And Shane also says, I'm here for all the wanging, post-credits and otherwise. So wang away, Toby, wang away. Well, yes, my wanging is what the post-credit sequences are all about. This episode has taken a turn I'm not altogether sure about. Mark Trevor Owen says, in my attempts to focus on the better bits of this story, I watched the episode on the same day as listening to this podcast, a technique I don't usually use. Lo and behold, a new favourite thing emerged. When Hilary Ryan says the word Gallifrey as she exhales on the last syllable, you can see her breath mist. It gives a sudden jolt as you realise that what looks like a studio-based scene was actually recorded on location. The over-reliance of location work will work to this story's advantage later, but this is an agreeably odd moment. I hadn't noticed that, Mark, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because, if you'd asked me, if you put me on the spot and said what was shot in the studio, Rodan/Kellner's office, I might have nominated, even though a redress suggests maybe not. But of course, as soon as you point that out, you go, of course. But I hadn't noticed the breath. I'm now going to be looking for visible breath on everybody. It just goes to show how glamorous television is. Even when you're inside, people can see your breath. Peter the Speaker says, it was only when reading The Eight Doctors in the late 90s I realised the word Shabugan specifically referred to a class of Time Lord dropouts. I assumed it was an English word for hooligans, similar to vandal. Maybe the Shabugans were a Dark Age group who terrorised Europe. Given that Spandrel and Elgin were using words like plebeian classes, I didn't question their use of the word Shabugan. Confession, I just Googled Shabugan to double-check that it wasn't really the name of a Dark Age people. Yes, because one can do that, can't one? One can go, I'm using something that's actually from Doc 2, and somebody will go, no, it's not from Doc 2. I'm sure I did that once with Nasty, Brutish and Short, which is from the Time Warrior, but it's also from a classic piece of literature. But Shabugan seems, and Panopticon, of course, and Runcible, there's a Runcible spoon in The Owl and the Pussycat, so... but Shabugan seems to have been entirely of Holmes's invention, and he doesn't elaborate what they are in The Deadly Assassin either. Frank Shell says, I'm not even sure Robert Holmes knew what he meant by the term when Castellan Spandrel refers to the vandalism being as what he's always running the Shabugans in for. They don't seem to be the same as the outsiders who Leela and Rodan ally with, but some kind of miscreants within the capital itself, damaging street furniture, etc. Yes, I mean, I think we've all, because you've got the outsiders and because you've got the reference to Shabugans, I do think of them as the same, even though it's not as neat a fit as I would like to think, and I think Frank's probably right, actually. New Who has retconned them into being the original native people of Gallifrey, Timeless Child, and all that malarkey. Oh, has it? Well. But yeah, I think that I think on the evidence of The Deadly Assassin and The Invasion of Time alone, the link between Spandrel's reference to Shabugans and these outsiders is tenuous at best. Colin Varney Earworm. Colin, and if you've not heard Colin's comments on my missing episodes rundown, you should. Some lovely insights into somebody who's watched Evil of the Daleks 4 times. Because he's been watching a lot, and he moved from England to Australia. And lovely insights you gave us, Colin. Thank you. So what insight is Colin going to give us into the invasion of time? This serial unsettled me, said Colin. Mostly I was assured that the Doctor was dissembling, fooling his enemies into accepting him as an ally. Yet occasionally I was genuinely convinced that an addled Doctor was betraying his closest friends. Baker's performance was unnervingly convincing, although I sometimes suspected the actor himself was bemused concerning the motivations for his uncharacteristic behaviour, particularly in scenes where he jokes with Syl about unscrupulous business practices or helps Crozier prepare Kiv for, oh, hang on, I see my mistake. Aha! Thanks, Colin. I see what you did there. Very clever. Nev Fountain, our guest, is joining us here. Nev says, I feel compelled at this stage to explain why the audio quality on my bits are so crap. This is why. I decided to visit some locations from the Invasion of Time to record my choices, a sort of looking for Gallifrey Blu-ray extra, if you will. It didn't quite work out that way. For my first bit, I wanted to record outside TC8 in Television Centre, where they recorded the studio scenes, but of course it was too busy, so I had to make do with being inside the Verity Lambert room inside TV Centre near where I work, hence my mention of the frozen Daleks. There's a lovely mural montage of 60s Daleks on the wall. I had 2 other locations I wanted to try, the school where they filmed the TARDIS scenes and Gallifrey itself. Unfortunately, the former doesn't seem to exist, or it's been converted into something I couldn't record outside, but for the latter I checked, and yes, the quarry in Redhill was still there. I'd planned to get on a train and make a quick day trip, but the missus had other ideas. She knew of a very nice hotel in the area, so seeking an opportunity for a nice weekend, she drove us down to Redhill, checked us in, and then dumped me by a muddy, windy road with no pavements and blind corners. Not wishing to be dematted by traffic, I plunged into the undergrowth and attempted to breach the wilderness of Gallifrey. Alas, the transduction barriers erected by the company that owned the place proved too strong. So there is a reason why the sound is a bit off. Having been thwarted for locations, I had to settle for convenient Who-themed backdrops. I will leave you to guess where I am for this episode. Oh, that's something to look forward to. And when Nev says the missus, his missus is a Doctor Who icon who I think packs more Doctor Who punch than Nev and I combined. David Gillespie Pratt says, hi, David. I'll have more thoughts on this part specifically shortly, but there's a fab fact in response to correspondence in the last episode. In the Basil Brush show of the noughties, the titular fox had a landlord called Mr. Rossiter, who was played, like Rigsby, from Rising Damp. Who played said character? Why, it was Milton Johns. Of course it was. So mixing them up is quite understandable. P.S. people, you really should watch the Year of the Sex Olympics. Yes, indeed. That's all about, some Rossiter John's confusion confessed from back in the day by a correspondent, which I think is perfectly understandable. Absolutely. David now says, right, part 2. I can't disagree with what you've said about the production, the design and the performances, but there are some great moments. The build up to the cliffhanger is really well done, up to a point. And that's at the heart of my feelings about this story. The concept is good. The story, for the first 4 parts at least, has a lot of potential. But it all needed more time and a bit more money. So while I find it enjoyable, I also find it frustrating. John Deere says, if it's more Milton Johns you want, may I recommend The Intruder, Granada, 1972. John's great for this. He's always seen a thing that you might not have, well, I certainly are, I'm going to admit it, quite often haven't heard of, and you watch it and go, this is brilliant, why don't I know about this? But John's really good at digging out those things, and it's always rather fun to see a piece of telly you didn't know that's full of the sort of people that we love. Peter Plummer's follow-up to The Owl Service, says John, The Intruder is. It's an eerie, haunting story of identity and belonging that Plummer co-wrote with Mervyn Haseman. The cast also features Jack Woolgar. One wonders if Haseman recommended him. Oh, yes, Sergeant Arnold from The Web of Fear. And a young Sheila Ruskin. Johns is not the main character, but he is central to the drama. It's available on DVD. Andy Priestner, watching The Intruder now. Marvellous stuff. Thanks, John. I'm glad that this has done some good, and it's lovely that we've been joined by a new patron, Andy Priestner, who is a writer of some brilliant books and a podcaster too, and all-round a very knowledgeable person about old telly and Doctor Who. Paul Dunn says, I love the post-credits. It's a bit of a post-credits love-in at the moment. I watched this episode. Some of you are going, what have I missed? You really haven't missed much. I watched this episode after you released this episode. You're so right. It's so tatty looking. This really blights the Williams era all the way through. I'm quite a fan of subdued lighting in the TARDIS. It works well in this, Enlightenment and Battlefield. They should have done it more. Yes, I think they should. Robbie Carnegie says, I'm going to try and focus on this episode rather than what's to come. I'm also trying not to focus on where this story is lacking. It's definitely not my favourite. My best bits in this episode are canine blowing up stuff, which is more convincing than shooting the guard. Yes, that's very true, Robbie. It's a good film sequence. And Milton Johns in general. But my absolute favourite part is Louise Jameson's wonderful force field acting. She manages to appear relaxed and nonchalant while still convincing that she's leaning on an invisible wall. As ever, she's marvellous. Yeah, and not only is it convincing, but it's a really good choice because most actors would play the kind of, I'm leaning on this spacey thing, whereas she plays it much more of, well, I'm used to these things. I'm aware it's a force field, even though you can see through it, but I'll take this in my stride like I've taken everything else in my stride. And it's a really intelligent choice as an actress. She's bloody smart, isn't she? And really good. Jasper says, I really like the moment when with the Doctor and the K9 in the TARDIS. I think Tom Baker's acting must have landed perfectly for me because I was not at all sure what was going on, so that moment with K9 felt like a big relief. However, I did also get got by Patrick Troughton in the War Games, so maybe I'm just especially gullible. Maybe. The Bill podcast, which is Oliver Crocker, says, Hi, Toby. Greatly enjoying your thoughts on this one. I recall watching it with my brother when it came out on VHS. We were hooked by Tom's performance. So volatile and unpredictable, we didn't know what was going on. But even as a kid, the production flaws stood out like a sore thumb, which nowadays I'm more forgiving of and fascinated about. One senses the Gallifrey setting must have been discussed as a cost-saving exercise, raiding the stock costume and prop store. The sets are so overlit in a way that David Maloney and his team so expertly avoided with The Deadly Assassin. That story had so much atmosphere and had an epic feel to it. This one should have the same, but suffers from the shortfalls you've so expertly and respectfully pointed out. Oh, stop it, Oliver. Arguably, The Invasion of Time had the potential to be one of the all-time great stories. Is it me, or is Tom Baker often at his most volatile in the final story of his seasons? Zygons, he's so distant. Before you write in, casuals, Zygons is the beginning of the season, but it was made at the end of the previous one, which suits the tone of that story. Seeds of Doom, there is so much anger in his portrayal. He's a wonderfully dangerous actor, but I suspect that it's at the point where he's most knackered from many months of production and in most need of a break that he becomes a bit reckless, and without a Camfield, Maloney, Hinchcliffe to manage him, he loses some discipline. I adore his performance in the very next story, where he's so fresh and vital. Naturally, he delivers at times in The Invasion of Time because he's Tom Baker. I feel for Chris Tranchell in this. He's clearly a very good actor. He delivers an outstanding performance in an episode of The Bill, Double Trouble, as an officer investigating Sun Hill of corruption. He doesn't blink and is chillingly convincing. He's giving a very fun performance as Andred. But should he be? I suspect had J&T been at the helm, he might have taken him aside and said, "Are you taking the piss?" On the spin side, Milton Johns, John Arnott and Louise Jameson, how is she not a dame, are just glorious in every frame, giving it such commitment in spite of some of the production's that'll-do shortcomings. But what great entertainment the story still provides, and here we all are talking about it in such granular detail all these years later. It's the glittering tinfoil gift that keeps on giving. Yay! Oliver's Bill stuff I will point you in the direction of, and him generally. He's an excellent writer and broadcaster, and just one of those very positive people that you're always very happy to hear from. And Andy Priestner, yay, is back again saying, always more beautifully crafted and considered than a tweet by a git. That probably refers to something I said in episode 2, Andy, and I've no idea because it was about a week ago and my brain, as we've already discovered, is atrophying to the extent that I'll have forgotten I said this in about 5 minutes. So there we go. But thanks. I think that was a compliment, Andy. So it sounds like a phrase I'd use, tweet by a git. But anyway, let us crack on. I don't like the sound of it coming out of my mouth, though. It sounds like me but it reminds me of when I was a schoolboy and I was aping Blackadder, going, a tweet by a git, which will make me look with embarrassment at my sort of 15-year-old self. But if I'm still saying it, I'm going to be even more embarrassed at sounding like that coming from my adult self. But there we go. You can't legislate against self-loathing. So here we go. We are going to, if you hated yourself so much, Toby, why do you make podcasts where it's just you talking for an hour? I don't know. I haven't quite come to grips with that. But anyway, let's just crack on, shall we? So I think when I'm saying things out loud, it's keeping the noises in my head at bay. So it's your own fault if you're listening to it. And it's my own fault if I'm watching and choosing to find the good things out about the invasion of time, because that's what this podcast is all about. It's about accentuating the positive. Let's see I can do that with the third installment of the invasion of time, and I'm going to do that in 3, 2, 1. So here we go. We're on the third episode of the Invasion of Time. I'm going to be now looking out to see what's inside and what's outside. And one has to remember when I'm talking about the tattiness that this is partially because the scripts about the killer cats of Ginseng or whatever it was called fell through at the last minute. So this has been done as an expedient by David Agnew, the producer and script editor. So this is outside. This is outside. Whereas this is in the studio. And here we have the Vardens coming on, and I hadn't. Yes, the tinfoil noise comes first, doesn't it? I mean, I think in principle, the tinfoil monsters are not actually a bad idea. I like a monster that is not an obvious man in a suit. You've basically condemned that guard to his death, Barusa. Well done. Tom's doing his distant acting here as well, but I quite like it here because I sort of get the impression he's got a barrier between the front of his brain and the back of his eyes. Does that make sense? So that he cannot be penetrated by the Vardens, and John Arnott is very crafty, and he's giving it a great deal of heft as Barusa, isn't he? I do, and you can tell Tom Baker kind of respects him. I don't mind. I like monsters that aren't obvious sort of men in rubber suits. So I think having the sort of floating tinfoil, if they were just a tiny bit more, actually sort of almost indistinct. But I'm looking at them now, and I think they're a bold attempt to do a different kind of creature. And of course that ties in with the script that we've been given. Tom Baker here, you see, I think is doing good work because he's kind of, I think in the way that he's speaking to Barusa, he is suggesting I'm in on something that you're not. And I don't think Barusa's, the way that that raises his eyebrows like a sort of slightly pissed off butler. And that's the stuff I like best about sometimes these shows, especially when they're set in science fiction land. If you have actors like Arnott and Milton Johns, when they do something that you would expect to see in an Oscar Wilde play or something, it just gives it a certain sort of class and almost a disdain that I wouldn't encourage if it was deliberately sending the thing up. And yet, is it kind of, I don't know, but I like it. No, it's not. It's giving us visual clues and acting clues about the character that also are charmingly juxtaposed with the science fiction shenanigans that the production is trying, and I think everybody knows, kind of failing to do. So you have to give it a sort of injection of class, and the class comes from the actors who can time even an exit. I mean, that exit of John Arnott's was brilliant when he gave it that sort of, whatever you say, raise of the eyebrows. I mean, that does play down Barusa a little bit, because I thought the Doctor was kind of, I like that, the way that Leela holds Rodan's hand and takes her. It's a shame that Rodan then sort of ceases to be of any value to the plot whatsoever. But hey, but yes, I thought Tom Baker was giving Barusa some sort of clues as to what was going on in the tone of voice that he used, and Barusa hasn't picked it up, which I would kind of think Barusa was smart enough to do, and the Doctor is a bit more the Doctor now. But of course, it gives us this scene instead where Barusa is really annoyed with the Doctor because he still believes that he's a traitor. He hasn't picked up that he's acting a lot nicer, and Tom Baker, I think, does the difference in his Doctors very well there. He's much breezier when he goes in, and I did like it at the beginning of that scene that you got the impression he was kind of hold of something back. He's wonderfully gimlet-eyed, isn't he, John Arnott? Yes, he's. Isn't that wonderful bit in the Tom Baker years where John Arnott says to Tom Baker, "I always play boring parts." I actually quite like. I don't think Barusa is a boring part because it's suffused with wit, and also he's got status and everything like that. But what he does is he does so little with his face, but he's got so much going on underneath it that he's so undemonstrative, and yet it's never tedious because there's an obvious intelligence and an obvious wit going on underneath. It's the sort of acting I really, really like. It's the sort of acting that looks like it's easy, but it's really hard because he's almost, unless you've got innate class, which I think John Arnott has, but it's sort of in refusing to do all the work with your face, you're making everything else do it. and that just makes it seem classier. And I like this. I like this sort of development of Barusa as well, where he accepts that the Doctor. That's a lovely moment where Barusa sort of accepts that the Doctor has sort of done something that he was incapable of doing, and lofty old Barusa isn't so big for his boots that he's not able to go, oh, okay, yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I'd have given myself away. I think that's a beautiful moment. I think you really buy that the Doctor and Barusa have this relationship where the Doctor, for all his cheekiness, respects Barusa, and Barusa, for all his disdain of the Doctor, grudgingly knows that perhaps the Doctor has weapons in his arsenal that means that he's of use to Gallifrey, even though he shuns Gallifrey's protocols and manners, etc. Now, I really like where the story goes with this, that you've suddenly got the idea that you have this kind of quisling, this Vichy government, if you like, of Castellan Kellner, who's immediately seen which side or in which direction the wind is blowing. So immediately, we haven't seen it yet, but it's sort of inferred there with Andrid, and it's setting us up for Andrid having the president, i.e. the Doctor, in his sights, which is again good foreshadowing of what's to come. But I think it's probably the most successful element of the story coming up, because I remember really liking episode 4 when I did this for Running Through Corridors. This idea that Gallifrey is kind of, it's almost like, I like those early episodes of V, the original miniseries, which play very much into World War II sort of storytelling of the place that is invaded, and what the people do who are in government, who sort of help the invaders and probably convince themselves they're doing the right thing, they're maintaining peace. It just allows for all sorts of very interesting drama. Are you brave enough to stand up to them? Is it a useful compromise to help the bad people but try to do good from your position? That's obviously not what Kellner's doing. And then you've got the sort of underground, the resistance, who in this case are going to be a load of shabby people. It does. I mean, I see what they're doing with Rodan. I've never quite got, because Hilary Ryan doesn't really do anything wrong, although it is that acting style of sort of slightly willowy 70s females, which I think does look very dated now, and shows what a contrast and how brilliant Louise Jameson is. And as I say, it's not Hilary Ryan's fault, all the fault of a good number of actresses in the 70s. It was kind of how women were viewed and portrayed, and the lens through which they were expected to be seen. And obviously what the writers are doing here is they want to show that you have a decadent, sort of spoiled, slightly aristocratic young woman, albeit one who essentially who works in a call centre or whatever. She's not in a call centre, I know. To show why the Gallifreyans might be uneasy outside, and how important this allyship is with their natural, if not enemies, but people with whom they don't normally mix, the outsiders, and how important the Citadel and the inside is to the Gallifreyans, who, as we will see, will later get banished. So it's to try to show how extreme this situation is. So we've got another of the Gallifreyan guards being given a line here. He gets quite a nice load of things to do here. I think he's called Michael Harley, this week. It's and much like this guard is being promoted to do special duties, this actor is. I like that little bit where he sort of says, he's basically saying, thanks, boss, for the opportunity to do this. It's a nice little bit of character work for a very, very minor part, and I think the actor rises to the occasion from having been, in the ranks of the non-speaking. So I've referred to this element before of each of the guards getting some of the guards getting promoted for 1 week only. So there we go. Max Faulkner alert. Max Faulkner is Nesbin, the leader of the Outsiders. I do like the orange filter that we have here, even though it's windy and it's a bit grey. It's either an orange filter or they're reflecting some orange light off, or maybe it's in the grading. But anyway, I like what they've done to the surface of Gallifrey. It does make it look a little bit, and we've had references to the Gallifrey sky being a burnt orange, haven't we? They're a very interesting bunch, these Outlas, because we've got Nesbin here, and we've got Presta, played by Gay Smith, but then we've got Jasko, played by Michael Mundell, who I think almost ends up with no lines, and Abliff, played by Ray Callahan. And they end up sort of, I think Abliff's supposed to be, I think Abliff even gets mixed up in the book where he suddenly becomes Jabliff. It's like he's been mixed up with Jasko and Abliff, and he becomes Jabliff in the novel. That's how sort of anonymous that they are. And Ray Callahan recently was found by Phantom Films and did a signing, but has since, I say recently, I'm talking in the past 5 years, but has since died. She's got some smarties. Michael Mundell's been dead for ages. He directed a friend of mine in a film of Hamlet, and he was also in Straw Dogs, Michael Mundell. But anyway, we've got this. I think this is really horrible, this scene with poor old Rodan. She's bare, but it's sort of it's such suffering porn. And it is kind of, she is kind of hopeless, isn't she? That the idea that she's so sort of institutionalized and pampered, that just the very idea of staying outside with her bag of Smarties is enough to make her cry. Anyway, so this set design is rather fun, isn't it? Because of course it's got the cogs and the wheels of they suggest the inner workings of a watch, don't they, and of a clock. So it does tie in with the time theme, and indeed I like that Peter Capaldi title sequence that was inspired by a YouTube video that had all those inner watch workings, and I know people don't, but I think it's a nice way of suggesting time and time travel. He's getting so Uriah Heep now. Milton Johns, I adore him. Look, he's got his hands clasped together, and he's just sort of observing and plotting. He's got his eye on everything. Oh, he's so gorgeous. And I really like the dynamic between the Doctor and Barusa for the whole of this. And I like the game that they're essentially playing, because we know that they're in on it together. So there's a lot of, I like it when actors are in scenes when they're conveying stuff to each other that nobody else in the room is aware of. And it can be done very, very badly by not very good actors. They raise the eyebrow too much. Really good actors can do it without changing their facial expression, and I think Tom Baker and John Arnott do that here. Tom Baker always raises his game when he's with an actor he respects, I think. Now, I think if you've got a monster that is mostly a vocal performance, I think you need a slightly stronger voice than Stan McGowan here as the lead Varden. We will see him in the flesh later, and I will probably be a bit rude about him, because I think it's quite a limp. It's quite a limp performance, and it's certainly one of very little vocal heft. And you really want somebody that can make all of this really land. And it's way sort of too conversational, where it does try to get bullish. It doesn't have the substance. I love all of this. The Doctor has absolutely got Kellner's number, and he's using it to his advantage. That's what I love all of this. I love all of this, digging out the troublemakers. This is a, in the same way that one likes a post-apocalyptic drama where you see people showing their true colours when everything, goes very badly, and we only have, a society is no longer there to help us. We see what it brings out in people as individuals. When alliances shift and change and power structures change, people, there are certain people that will leap upon that uncertainty and make sure that they prosper, and they will do that at any cost, to the extent of saying, do you want me to root out some troublemakers? And all of this is brilliant. The Doctor is I mean, he's kind of, he's allowing Kellner to suck up to him, to show his true colours, but he's also sort of giving him a hard time, which Kellner deserves, which the Doctor would be doing if he was a despot. But we know the Doctor isn't a despot, but he's kind of doing anyway, which shows that we've all sort of got the despot in us, because the Doctor is being cruel to the person that he's using. Now, we know that Kellner kind of deserves it, but there's still a cruelty there, which I think if anyone's seen Tom Baker misbehaving on the studio floor, is can kind of be within him as well. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I love Tom Baker and I love the Fourth Doctor, but both of them have a malevolent streak. But maybe you need that, as Barusa kind of tacitly acknowledges. Maybe there's some of the things we don't necessarily like about the Fourth Doctor / Tom Baker are also the things that make him so brilliant, and you can't have one without the other. And I wouldn't want Tom Baker not to be Tom Baker. So it's curious, isn't it? And it just goes to show, just because you don't like something in somebody, or just because somebody has a personality trait that is not particularly enjoyable or even to be celebrated, that doesn't mean we should write off the rest of them. And this is brilliant, this whole thing, because I love what it's doing to Gallifrey. I love its kind of breaking down Gallifrey's security and infrastructure, and it has this real paranoia of a kind of McCarthyite rooting out the traitors. It's like any a country that has been invaded and has a new ruling force, and it relies on the existing infrastructure of that country to spread their power, and it's people like Kellner who play ball, who then gild their own position, but also probably settle a few personal scores at the same time. And so it comes something that is, it has the big picture of the invasion, but also the human drama of what people do at the basest and most selfish levels. So you got Ray Callahan back there, and Gay Smith. Gay Smith, who I haven't mentioned, who's now, I think, a multi-millionaire racehorse trainer in Australia, under a different name, I think, who plays Presta Abliff's, Nesbin's, I think she's his wife. She's the female outlet, anyway. You see, I like all of this stuff, the sort of routing out of the threat to the new regime. I like all of that. And Dennis Edwards is brilliant. I like the way he sort of haughtily faces off against Milton Johns, who's completely unfazed by it, and kind of knows he's being bad and kind of enjoys it. And I love the dignity that Dennis Edwards maintains here. I think this is really good. 10th. Well, it's interesting though, because he was talking about being young in episode 1, wasn't he? I'm in my 10th regeneration, but surely when you regenerate again, you get younger, or do you get incrementally more creaky? Who knows? They sort of mess about with this, and it doesn't really matter. But I like all of this, and I like that, Andred is clearly showing that he's got an eye on revolution himself. Yeah, and this feeling of a sort of fomenting resistance, I think, is really exciting stuff. And again, it ties in with a lot of drama that young kids who watch this sort of thing would have had as the sort of thing their mums and dads watched, wartime dramas, which were prolific in the post-war years. So using anything like that, Terry Nation did that sort of stuff very, very well, of using the familiar storytelling beats, traits, or moments, or styles. I do find a lot of the Outsiders it's an interesting beat. Is it one? They spend money on 1, 2, 3, 4 speaking parts, which you probably don't need, but I suppose they're doing it because there is also a lot of I'm going to say this and everyone goes yeah, which is it's a little bit cliched. Oh, you've got a couple of these. I always forget about these 2 Time Lords, who I know aren't long for this world. I think spoilers. I'm sorry. Because whenever I see them, I go, I've forgotten about these guys, and they both get to say yes as well. That's very nice for them. And then I think they get killed almost immediately. But every time they arrive, it's a bit like, I think I've said it before, Mike Yates under the desk in The Green Death when he pops up. I always forget that and go, oh yeah, he does that. There are a few moments in Doctor Who that every time they happen, I remember I always forget them. I'll have him shot. That's very good. The Castellan will have me shot. That's right, I'll have him shot. I mean, that's very silly. But yes, so those 2 Time Lords, I always forget about them, and then I always remember I've forgotten them. The Doctor's hat. Oh, so of course, I wonder if he's dead now, the poor old bodyguard, or whether he's stunned. I do like the Doctor's hat on K9's tail. That's quite fun. It's a good hat, that, as well, but I think you have to be tall to get away with it. Tom Baker gets away with a lot because of his height. It is shot slightly differently, and it is a bit more cramped, isn't it? It's well, no, I don't know if it is. Anyway, doesn't matter. I do like a TARDIS with slightly different lighting, and I feel that this does have that. He's really trying to. He's sort of drawing attention to the fact that was quite difficult to balance, wasn't he? Anyway, is this where? So we're probably getting to the episode ending now, aren't we? But this has been nicely seeded because and he hasn't been prating about this episode, Chris Tranchell, and Andred is sort of emerging as the head of the Resistance. All of this stuff has been, building up to this moment. So I think that's quite carefully placed and very nicely done, and much better work from Chris Tranchell this year, this episode compared to last. And I know it wasn't done in order, so that doesn't really make a difference. But there we go. Ablif, Jasko, and Bodyguard. There we go. So that is the end of episode 3 of The Invasion of Time. Production unit manager John Nathan Turner. Mike Jeffries, he died a couple of years ago. He was on my in memoriam for whichever year it was, last year, the year before. Ken Westbury, fine, the film cameraman of The Singing Detective and The Gunfighters, but his work went right back to when he was a dog's body at Ealing. He only died last year or the year before. Fantastic, and I was we were able to get him on the Fury from the Deep DVD commentary at the height of COVID. What a legend. So that was the end of episode 3 of The Invasion of Time. What is my favourite thing about it? Well, let's think. I love the dynamic between the Doctor and Barusa. I love the way that Tom Baker and John Arnott riff off each other. I think they're 2 actors who complement each other very well, and that helps with the dynamic of the character. As I say, I thought it slightly undermined Barusa that he didn't realise the Doctor was giving him sort of coded signals until the door was shut and he was relaxed. But that helps with the message, and that helps with the drama, and that helps with the differing textures, I suppose. So it's okay. It's just that Arnott is so good, I kind of slightly wanted him to be slightly ahead of the game. I think Chris Tranchler is doing much better work this week. I really like the sort of the building resistance on Gallifrey. I like the slightly sort of, it's almost like a paranoid conspiracy thriller that, you've got people who are having to sort of work in plain sight, but are then in little corners saying, oh yeah, but I'm planning against this. I've got, I'm against the president. I'm against the Castellan. You've got Milton Johns, who I could vote for every bloody week because he is so good again in this episode. And I love the fact that the Doctor's got Kellner's number and the way that he sort of manipulates him to the point of bullying slightly. So I think that's an interesting talking point about how do we allow the Doctor, do we like the fact that the Doctor does that because Kellner deserves it? But actually, I don't like bullies full stop, and all bad people think that the subject of their bad behaviour deserves what they're getting, and that justifies their bad behaviour, and that's very pertinent today. But let's not get into that. But I do like all that stuff with making him look for the jelly baby and all of that sort of thing, and that's brilliantly done. So, and I like the cog mechanism design of the lead-lined room. I think that is visually arresting, and it becomes a sort of motif for the story to the extent it's also on the book cover. But it also, it's a quite not too subtle indication that this is about time. But I do quite like the fact that they've gone for something different with the Vardens. They were almost better actually when you got these stories on bootleg, and they were and they were a bit sort of naff quality. The monsters that were not so sort of distinct were helped with that, and they looked like sort of indistinct shimmers, which is a perfectly reasonable way to create a monster, particularly one that moves along sound waves or whatever it is that they do. So I actually don't mind. I don't think the tinfoil noise helps them, to be fair. I think that's true, but I actually think sometimes they're not indistinct enough, and they just look like somebody bashing a piece of tinfoil from behind, and it's clearly a man shape. But when it's not, when it's a bit more indistinct, and when they're just sort of hovering there, if they had a better voice as well, I think they're rather good fun. But I think my favorite, I think definitely my favorite thing of the episode is the growing underground resistance, that feeling that there's a rising, and that this battle is going to have to be fought sort of from within and from underneath and from the sides and in the shadows, and that's really dramatic. And I think that builds up, and that gives a feeling of sort of anybody could be caught at any time, because we know that Kellner's rooting people out. So they've only got a matter of time before they can act, and will they be able to use these outsiders, and will people like Gomer be able to survive on the outside while this rebellion forms, and all of that. That's all really good dramatic stuff, I think, that is judged pretty well, and it feels an altogether more assured production this week. Funnily enough, it's sort of more tonally consistent, and and everybody's sort of acting in the same direction, even to the extent that I even like the scene with the bodyguard, and just that little moment where he goes, "Oh, yeah, thank you for choosing me for this." I think there's just got a few subtle little touches that, when this story doesn't have those, its shortcomings become more apparent, and when it's a bit glib, its shortcomings become more apparent. And I feel this was very consistently toned. I feel slightly sorry for Hilary Ryan, who's only allowed to sort of shriek, but I can see what they're aiming for there. They're trying to show that the Time Lords are perhaps ripe for being taken over because they can't even cope with the outdoors. They've got a bit lackadaisical in their omnipotence. So it's all placed there for a reason. It's all thoughtfully deployed, if you were. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna choose that, and let's pop over that. So I'm choosing the underground resistance, sort of conspiracy theory, World War II, blah, 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 that element of the story, the fermenting rebellion that is the undertone to the whole episode. I wonder what Nev Fountain will choose, and where we'll see he is on his video.
Hello, Toby. Nev Fountain here again, still in what was left of the Capitol before the Time War. As you can see behind me, the President's capsule has been impounded as he or she dared to return. I think the Chancellery Guard, what's left of them, will be coming to transduct it to the museum soon. And behind me, another relic from the Time War. My choice for episode 3 of the Invasion of Time is Milton Johns as Castellan Kellner. I think there are a certain number of actors and characters that distinguish themselves in Doctor Who's history without actually being the obvious antagonist. Think John Challis as Scorby, think Peter Miles as Nyder, and think Milton Johns as Castellan Kellner. It is a wonderful, wonderful performance, and so very grounded too. It keeps us all where we're supposed to be in a ridiculously ramshackle story, where the Doctor's acting crazy and Baruza's acting very weirdly in places. It's Milton Johns' performance and the character of Castellan Kellner that keeps it moving. You know exactly where you are with him. He's sucking up to the antagonist of the time, whether it's the Doctor as President, or the Vardens, or the Sontarans. And I think Milton Johns does a fantastic job in doing this. He is one of those actors that's appeared in Doctor Who more than once, like Peter Miles. But as with Peter Miles, even though he does a perfectly serviceable job in Enemy of the World, he knows this is a part he can really get his teeth into. A character who is not out of place, would not be out of place in I, Claudius. And boy, in episode 3 does he have a wonderful time. That fantastic jelly baby exchange with the President, the expelling of Goma, the plotting and the scheming to do away with the President. It is so I, Claudius, and you could see Milton Johns in I, Claudius, and it's so sad he wasn't. Yeah, so it's a wonderful, wonderful performance. It stayed with me, and I think it stayed with a lot of people. I think Castellan Kellner keeps popping up in other media. I think Terence Dix was very fond of him in his books. He's one of the most fantastic portrayals and characters of Time Lord society. And I think, like Runcible the Fatuous, he stays in the memory, and he certainly stayed in mine. So my pick for the Invasion of Time, Part 3, is Milton Johns as Castellan Kellner.
Beautifully put, Nev, and I actually do get a point for that because I chose Milton Johns last time. I obviously would not be able to choose him again, so if he's chosen later by Nev, I get the point. That's how it works. But of course, it's not to my advantage really, because I didn't get the point last time. Yeah, no, I'm sure that's how it works. Are you following this? I embarked on a journey where I was making absolute sense to myself. But yes, because I think it has to work like this, because I might have chosen Milton Johns too late, in which case, if I'd had my eye on choosing him for episode 5 or 6, I would have then lost the point because I'd not been able to choose him. But I think if I get in there early, I get the point, but it means I didn't get the point last week, so it's still a sort of wasted vote for one episode because I didn't. So I'm still disadvantaged by getting the wrong episode, which is fair enough because I should have an advantage for getting the right episode. So I'd have been more at advantage if I'd chosen it here because I'd have got the point, but also wouldn't have used up a vote on another episode, which I have done because I chose it on another episode. So yes, no, that makes sense to me. So I get the Milton Johns point, which I'd have missed out on if I'd been too shy about Milton Johns, which would have been a shame. I seem to recall, there has been a few performances where I've not called them in time and not been allowed to celebrate them. I mean, I have because I don't shut up, but the point still stands. But this is actually a better episode for him than last time. And Nev's quite right. I mean, he chose those particular scenes, but also it's because he's so constant. Whatever is going on around him, whatever Tom Baker's doing, whatever the scenery is doing, whatever different performance style he's being dealt with, there is a measured brilliance to Milton Johns. And he just makes sure that you know you're still watching the same program, and he treats it in a way that grounds and keeps you on board with the whole thing. I think it's hard to overestimate just how important he is to this story being any good anywhere, to be honest. He's so damn good. It's such a brilliant performance. I think he's brilliant in The Enemy of the World as well, which we'll come to at some point when I do The Enemy of the World for this. But I think he is so good in this, and I just think he does some really heavy lifting, but he doesn't look like he's breaking a sweat because it's just so innate. He has this class, this timing, this gift for character, and Kellner is also a gift of a character because you know exactly what is required of him from the script. And actually what's great about the character is that we've all known a Kellner, and they always bloody prosper, don't they? And so maybe this is why I accept the Doctor bullying him, maybe, because we all know somebody who's nice to the right people and an absolute shyster at other times. And often some really wise and intelligent people are absolutely taken in by these transparently sort of conniving and sort of dodgy and unctuous and calculating people who always seem to prosper because they say the right things to the right people, and people don't see through them. Even though, as with Milton Johns, their egregiousness is pretty much there on the surface, but they flatter. And even the wisest, brightest, and most powerful people can fall for flattery. Although, in the cases of the Vardens, they know that actually Kellner is going to be a very useful tool for them. So it doesn't matter whether he flatters them or not. They just know that he can be manipulated into doing what they want for the sake of his own skin. Whereas the Doctor knows, he's manipulating him. He's also got his number, but he's manipulating him for a different reason, and because he knows that Kellner will do it. So it's a useful character in terms of plot, but also in terms of character, but also one that, although he's sort of the same throughout, he means different things to different people, and he operates differently with different people, and also that he's confident enough in himself to be totally transparent about what he is, and yet then overplays the sort of creepiness when he's dispensing it to those above him. He's such a sucker. Yes, very, very good. It's a brilliant performance. But I liked my choice as well. And for those of you who cannot see, because this is largely an audio release, it was at Broadcasting House that Nev was broadcasting from then. There was a Dalek behind him, and then I saw a TARDIS even further down, and both of those things are in the corridor up to the reception at Broadcasting House before the turny doors, where you go in to make radio magic, which Nev does an awful lot. But I'm going to stop casting a spell over you now and ask you to make your way through the transduction barriers back into your own realm, while I leave you with a point, but a point that's not really helped me because it's denied me a point from last week. But it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. It's not very important. And if you disagree with me, well, I'll probably disagree as well, because anything you say, I'm trying to be Castan Kelder now. I'm trying to be all things to all. But I was trying to suck up to you then, but actually I felt like I was being a bit sort of gruesomely creepy. It it felt a bit like I was trying to get into one of your sex parties, and I don't know if you have any, but I don't want to be in one. But I sounded like I was talking my way into one, even though I hadn't intended to. So shall we leave it there? I'm going to put my hat on, and I'm not going to pick up any of the keys that fall out of it. Good day to you. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me and my special guest, Nev Fountain. Avail yourself of his work, you'll love it. And he's on Instagram at Nev Fountain. I'm grateful to him and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Robert Jewell, Paul Jones, Andrew Jordan, Andrew Jolly, Christopher Joyce, Jess Jerkovic, Rick King-Byatt, Andy Kitching, Ashley Knight, Clive Lewis, James Lark, Lisa and Andrew, Gavin McLean, Steve Manfred, Dave Matthewman, Jason Mayo, Rossa McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Ian Morgan, Matthew Newton, Graham Knott, Dave Owen, Harry Palmer, Adam Parkin, Ken Patterson, Melvin Pena, Jonathan Protter, Kevin Parker, Scott Bride, Dylan Reese, John Rivers, Jim Sangster, Keith Say, Graham Slight, David Shepherdson, Stephen, Neil Tate, Nick Temple, Damien Timmer, Sabrina Tirabassi, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Stephen White, Tom White, Michael Williams, Reese Williams, Andrew Willis, Andrew Wilson, David James Wilson, and Sydney Wilson. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to be a patron, and one of the things that you get for that is having your name read out on the credits, just like you heard just then, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month, you get exclusive releases. All of the podcasts are released in advance. You get advance releases, but you also get some that are just for you. You get behind-the-scenes looks at my Blu-ray and DVD antics. You also get interviews from my archive and monthly AMAs and all sorts of other things. The £3 a month gets you everything that is available. There are tiers, but I don't hold anything back, only to give to the higher tiers. It's egalitarian and purely based on your choice and or means, which I think is the fairest way of doing it. And I'm very grateful to everybody that is there at the moment. And I think it's a nice place to hang out. There's a really nice atmosphere and people back and forth and some running gags and all sorts of things. It's nice. It's sort of like Doctor Who forums, but without the arseholes. And, well, present company accepted. If you don't want to get involved in any of that shenanigans, but would occasionally like to make a financial contribution, because this is my work now, really, a lot of it is my output. I'm a self-employed artiste, and this is my art. And you could do that at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock. But, you know, I listen to loads of podcasts that I don't pay for, and you're perfectly right to do that too. That's the way that these things work. We just fling stuff out there, and if you like this, and I hope you do, you're under no obligation to pay for it. But what I'd really like you to do, that costs you nothing, is to go to Spotify and Apple and iTunes, and basically wherever you get this, wherever you're listening to this, if there's an option to give it 5 stars, thumbs up, to subscribe, please do all of those things. And if you can write a few lines of review, that really helps to separate this from all of the other stuff that's out there of a similar ilk. I'm all over social media, where sometimes it takes me less time to come up with the word ilk. I'm on Twitter at Haydock Podcasts, at Toby Haydock. I'm on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That will really help. I'm trying to get that in order now. I'm trying to buff it up and use it properly, because I think I've not done so. Instagram is kind of where I'm particularly getting used to hanging out. I'm also on Blue Sky, and yeah, I mean any of those places. I've yet to commit to OnlyFans, but if these sex parties start going well, who knows? So here we are. Well, I've bought the French ticklers and the lube. Sorry, this is because I figured if this is the first time people listen to the post credits bit, I thought I might have to throw in some of the promised sauciness that has literally never happened before, but seems to be a running theme of this particular edition. So yes, Emmanuel meets the invasion of time. That's how far across the world of porn I am. That's my most up to date porn reference, is Emmanuel. Anyway, here we are. This is the post credits, where it's more than Ashley Knight, as we discovered. I think Frank's here. Is Frank here? Jason's here. John's here. Paul's here. So welcome to you all. Perhaps, as I say, there's more people in the post credits than aren't. And here we are. And I've wasted this one just by mentioning you. I don't know why I do this. I was supposed to. I think I used to at the end just sort of do a line, and now it's ended up being a sort of pointless monologue. But then again, the whole thing's a pretty pointless monologue. Anyway, there we are. Welcome. If this is your first time in the post-credits, don't worry. I'm being very, very gentle with you, and you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And we've all got a safe word, which is shut up, Toby.